be a student of possibility. Number one. Next, be a student of opportunity. Possibility is one study, opportunity is another study. Then third, be a student of ability. Here's the next one that's vitally important, and that's the study of inevitability. Some things at certain times become inevitable, and we'll go through that. And the last one is rationality. How to be a speed thinker. How to grasp problems and take them apart and put them back together in rapid fashion. How to ponder something and then make sure, that it fits you, it fits your philosophy, it fits what you want to accomplish. Rationality, very important subject to study. So that's the list: possibility, opportunity, ability, inevitability, and rationality. Now let's start with possibility. I heard a sermon just a few weeks ago. I'm going to abbreviate it, but I think you're going to get the points that I'm going to cover here. I thought it was one of the classic sermons I've ever heard. And it had 3 major points. Not 30, just 3. But they were so classic, and here they were for your notes. Number 1, if you think it's impossible, it isn't. Point number 2, if you think you know everything, you don't. Here was number 3. If you think you're alone, you're not. I thought those are some classic points. If you think it's impossible, it isn't. If you think you know everything, you don't. If you think you're alone, you're not. Now, under the title, If You Think It's Impossible, It Isn't, he told a unique story. It's the story of Rich DeVos, founder of Amway. Rich DeVos needed a heart transplant. Critical. Now fast forward. Rich DeVos gets his heart transplant. That's one part of the story. But here's the rest of the story that's remarkable. Later, and not too long ago, Rich DeVos has the opportunity to have dinner with the lady who gave him her heart. You say, that's impossible. When I heard this, that's exactly what I said. The congregation that listened to the sermon, this is exactly what they all said. Impossible. You couldn't possibly have dinner with the person who gave you their heart. Here's what happened. There was a lady who needed, I believe it was a liver transplant. And many times it's best if the liver and the heart go together in a transplant. So someone who dies has donated their organs. This lady gets the liver and the heart as a single transplant. And now her heart is left over. And her heart goes to Rich DeVos. And that's how it was possible for Rich DeVos to have dinner with the lady who gave him her heart. Fantastic story. No telling what technology will do in the years to come. No telling what your faith can produce. No telling what can be done. That was a great point. If you think it's impossible, it isn't. Then the next point was classic. If you think you know everything, you don't. How often we've learned this, right? From the time we were just young until probably the present time, to where there were times along the way when we thought we knew it all. We thought we knew everything. We thought we had it down. We thought we had it made. We thought we had this one locked. And sure enough, we were surprised later that we didn't know everything. We thought we had the answer to this problem. We thought we had all the answer. But as it turned out, sure enough, we didn't have all the answers. Thinking we know everything, thinking we've got it, then sure enough, something comes along to prove us wrong. But that's how we grow. Our own ego at times wants to believe that we do have the answers, that we've arrived. And then a touch of humility has to come to prove to us that we really don't know everything. We think we know everything about our business, but I'm telling you, we have a lot to myself and tell my story, or at least say hello and see if the window will open a new opportunity. But seizing the moment, not letting opportunity slip away. Be a student of when it's the right time. Be a student of when this is the moment. this could be the year, the first 3 months of the next year to set up the year 2000. Say, I'm going to recognize this as a new opportunity for me to really pour it on these first 3 months. I'm calling it springtime. Learning to recognize opportunity, be a student of opportunity. Now, here's the others. Next is ability. Human ability, as we ponder and think back over as much history as we've mastered of what human beings have done in the last 6,000 years, and especially what human beings have done that we know more particular about the last couple of hundred years, since the birth of America, especially us who are Americans. But the last, let's say, 1,000 years of the Renaissance, walking hopefully out of the Dark Ages, when there was a whole burst of freedom of thought, craft, artist, genius, music. It seems like all of these unique architecture, all of these things sort of began to awaken almost simultaneously. And within a few short years, everything seemed to be bursting forth like a variety garden called the Renaissance. But that helps us to understand human ability is just incredible. Given the right moment, given the right opportunity, given the right climate, given the right season, human beings can think, create, and do the most extraordinary things. That's general ability. There's a unique story talking about incredible ability of a university student who was being given an incredible award. He was in mathematics, and this was an incredible award of mathematics, and the ceremony was extra special. And here's why. This young student in his mathematics class one day was just sort of nodding off, and when he sort of woke up, the class was leaving. So he gathered up his books and prepared to leave, and then he looked up at the blackboard and saw two mathematical problems. When he looked at these two mathematical problems on the board, he thought, well, that's the assignment, for the next class. I better jot those down. And so he jotted down those two problems, mathematical problems, and then hurried out with the rest of the class. When he got home that evening, he started working on these problems. And he said, these are the toughest mathematical problems I have ever seen. There seems to be no answer. There seems to be no answer. And he worked with both of them. And he just literally almost tore his hair out saying, at first they seemed fairly simple, but I can see right now there is no answer. There is no answer. But finally, one of them that he had really struggled with, he finally found the answer, or thought he had the answer. And he, packed up his notes, and when the next class was opened up, he offered his paper to the teacher. And little did he know, when he offered his paper to the teacher looked at what he had done, and he said, I jotted those two mathematical problems down. He said, I've wrestled with them. There didn't seem to be any answer. Finally, I got a breakthrough on one of them, and here's the best I can do. Well, the teacher was astounded. And the reason is because the teacher had put up on the blackboard the two mathematical problems that the world had said was unsolvable. These were the two mathematical problems that could not be solved, and everybody agreed. And lo and behold, the teacher checked, and for sure, he had solved one of the world's unsolvable problems. And he was getting this incredible award for having solved this problem. Now, here's the unique part of the story. When he wrote those two problems down and took them home to go to work on them, he didn't know that they were two of the world's mathematical unsolvable problems. Great story. The human genius is limitless. The possibility for thought is so incredible. The unique thing about thought and spirit, it has no restriction. It has no physical body moving through space and time. An airplane now can only go so fast. Even the speed of light can only go so fast. But here's what's incredible. A thought and spirit, travels faster than the speed of light and has components that, nothing else can match. These are the possibilities of the human brain, the ability to think and to ponder and to wonder and to figure things out. Now here's what I want you to discover in this study, and that is your own ability. Part of it you discover as you go. That's what happened to Mark. When he first got into sales, in the clothing store, he found out he could, represent a product and he could do pretty good. And that was a discovery for him. And if he hadn't gotten that job, who knows? He might have gotten off into something else and that wouldn't have really started to tap his unique abilities. Then, of course, when he put the Herbalife program together, those abilities that were there all the time started developing, and he soon discovered, hey, I can do this and I can do that. Not only can I do all of this, I can do all of this. And when it reaches this level, now I've got the confidence that since I've mastered this, I can master the rest, And that's not only the Mark Hughes story, that's everybody's story. Skill by skill, language by language, ability by ability, yours can grow just as well as Mark's or anyone else. You've got it. The key is to use it. Yes, you can learn to do this, but how about this, and how about the next step, and how about the next step? Don't stop. Now that you've gotten started, don't stop on your journey to study and tap and utilize your own personal ability. Next is, as leaders, we must be students of inevitability. What is inevitable? Here's a little scene. 300 feet from Niagara Falls in a little boat with no motor and no oars. We call this scene inevitable. It's over. If you find yourself in such an unfortunate position, it's already lost. 300 feet from Niagara Falls, little boat, no motor, no oars. It's over. It's already done. Even though you haven't crashed over the falls, even though that experience hasn't yet occurred, you're now in this unfortunate position, and it's called inevitable. I raise this issue because what you don't want to be caught in is in those inevitable positions, where either through carelessness or whatever, rather than find yourself 300 feet from Niagara Falls, if someone would have painted the roar of the falls sufficiently for you way upstream, or maybe they had seen an experience of someone who reached that inevitable point, and then they were lost. If enough of those scenes were painted, then you probably wouldn't have been so careless to have found yourself in that position. And that's really what life is all about, learning from the experiences of others that have either witnessed or have been in these, inevitable positions where because of mistakes and because of failure and because of carelessness, they have found themselves in this inevitable position, and sure enough, it was too late. We must teach our children that there are certain points in life that are inevitable. The disaster is inevitable. The heartbreak is inevitable. I learned it in economics. I found out early, you could make $5,000 a month and go broke. And way back then, $5,000 a month was a lot of money. And I used to say, how could you go broke if you made $5,000 a month? And the answer was simple: spend $6,000. And if you're making $5,000, it's easy to spend that other $1,000 and just not realize it. It just gets away. So it is easy to go broke making $5,000 a month, just spend $6,000. And it's inevitable. If you don't change your ways, if you don't recognize it soon enough, if somebody doesn't come along and sort of ring the alarm bells quick enough, sure enough, the inevitable will come, to spend more than you make. One of my friends says, if your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep becomes your downfall. And there finally comes a point when it's inevitable. So don't find yourself there, but be a student. If I keep up my present direction, where will it take me? If I keep up my present disciplines, or where will that take me? And my lack of disciplines accumulated over some period of time, where will that lead me? So the key is to be a student of inevitability, so that you don't find yourself in that impossible position where you've crossed the line and now it's too late. Next, and the last one, is to be a student of rationality. Learning to put things through your own mind. And we are usually only going to act on something that's important if it makes sense to us. Now, sometimes what makes sense to us leaves us still a little bit short of what we should know, for the full expanse of knowledge to do a lot more things, but we can only really move as quickly as things make sense to us. Sometimes we step out by faith, but it makes sense to us to use our little faith. It makes sense to us to take a chance. It makes sense to us to make the investment first and then hope for the harvest. But if it doesn't make sense, if it isn't rational, then we're probably not going to act. We have to learn to study, our own rationality, what makes sense to us, and then try our best to make it make sense to somebody else. If you make the presentation in such a way that it's obvious, it's logical, I can see it, it makes sense to me, that's the way it seems to be, so we will act on that. If you'll get good at that, I'm telling you, you can affect a lot of people's lives. Now, here's the best rationality. We call it common sense. Humans have been given this extraordinary ability to use their brain power to come up with what we call common sense, right? Yes, I've heard all of this, but common sense tells me that it looks like that's an exaggerated story, not a real story. Common sense tells me. So part of it is to trust your common sense, but also to be willing to expand your common sense. What seemed to be common sense, 4 or 5 years ago, was a little short. Now I understand common sense is to think of it this way and this way. What happens when you start a new direction? Self-esteem starts to accelerate. It doesn't take much for you to feel good about yourself. Just committed to a new direction and you feel good. And an apple a day, committed to finally having a health program that'll make you the healthiest you've ever been in the next 20 years, all you got to do is munch on that first apple. And nobody even has to be around you, and you don't have to announce it to the world. But you munch on that first apple and say, this is the beginning of developing a health program that's going to make me so healthy I'll have the vitality to do whatever I want to do for the next 30 years of my life. Now, if you eat an apple the second day, you become almost delirious, saying, wow, I'm on my way. Somebody said, just 2 apples? Says, look, you don't understand. Not only did I do it yesterday, I've done it again today. This is really proving to myself with no audience, no microphones, no nothing, just you and yourself. You've convinced yourself, I'm on my way to the healthiest I ever have been. I'm starting a new life. This is the second day. I'm on my way. That's how easy it is to change your life. You don't need some dramatic vision. Just begin something. And maybe by health or by whatever other things we can think of to do, you just get back on a better track. One of the major things Shove taught me when I met him, he said, poor thinking habits keeps most people poor. Not poor working habits. Most people work hard, but they don't think hard. And Shove taught me that the mind is like a factory, a mental factory. And whatever you think about all day long pours ingredients into this mental factory. And that's what builds the economic, social, financial fabric of your life. He quoted me a Bible phrase that says, as you think, so you become. How awesome. When he talked about poor thinking habits, he had me. I used to start the day reading the morning newspaper. I mean, you can believe that or not. I'd get a cup of coffee and read the paper. I'd load up on wars and riots and murders and stabbings and killings and bank robberies and muggings and car wrecks and tragedies. I'd even read the back pages. I seem to like that stuff for some weird reason. I'd load up on all that, and then I'd start the day. You can imagine the kind of days I used to have. The guy says, I want to be a great leader. Wonderful. The first thing we do is follow him to his house. When we get there, we walk in and check his library, number 1. Somebody says, well, why check his library? The reason is because what a man reads pours massive ingredients into his mental factory, and the fabric of his life is built from those ingredients. You would not believe what some people have got in their house to read. You would not believe. One of the best dressed up words I know for a lot of it is trash. Can you imagine dumping a barrel of trash into this mental factory every day and coming out with a rich, dynamic, positive life? It can't be done. You might as well try making a cake with cement. The kids back in Danbury, Connecticut, high school, they're asking me questions one day. I'm talking to the kids. Kids got good questions these days. One of them said to me, Mr. Rohn, how do you build the good life? I said, it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Here's how you build anything. Select the right ingredients, keep out the wrong ingredients, and it starts with thought. Everything starts with thought. So you must be wise and careful what you think about, because that starts everything. You got to be wise and careful. I asked the kids, what would happen if somebody dropped sugar in my coffee? They said, well, you'd be okay. I said, what if somebody dropped strychnine in my coffee? They said, well, you'd be dead. I said, correct. Lesson 1. Life is both sugar and strychnine. You gotta be careful. I said, what if my worst enemy drops in the sugar? They said, will you be okay? I said, what if my best friend, even by accident, drops in the strychnine? They said, well, you'd be dead. I said, correct. Lesson 2, watch your coffee. You got to be careful. See, it doesn't matter who hands you the bad stuff. It doesn't matter where you get the bad stuff. It'll still do its damage on your bank account, wherever you get it. Mr. Schoaf gave me one of the greatest phrases when I first met him when he said, Jim, every day stand guard at the door of your mind. How important. Stand guard at the door of your mind. And you decide what goes into your mental factory. Don't let anybody just dump anything they want to in your mental factory, because you've got to live with the results. Philosophy is simply what you know. Now, to correct a couple of old cliches, what you don't know will hurt you. And to correct another one, ignorance is not bliss. Boy, it's so important to have the correct philosophy. It's so important to know. Philosophy sets the course of your life. Philosophy is simply what you know. So it's important to know. I'm telling the kids these days, make sure you get the information while you're here. I'm talking to the Newport Harbor high school kids in some lectures last year and this year. And my encouragement is, make sure you get all the information while you're here. I know it's laborious. I know it isn't easy to read the books and take the classes and try to get good grades. But hey, while you're here, gather it all up. The book you miss will make a difference, right? The information you don't get will make a difference in the legacy of your equities over the next few months, the next few years. So philosophy, this is where it all begins. Now, I've divided philosophy into 3 parts. One is basic, starting out philosophy. The baby starts processing information right away. Cold is bad, warm is good, hungry is awful, food is terrific. The baby starts reacting and processing information and having certain reactions to it. So our philosophy starts early, gathering information and reacting to it. Next is expanded philosophy. At least enough philosophy to be gainfully employed and offer a value to society and find your place in the marketplace. You know, be a reasonable, decent human being. Expanded philosophy. But now how do you become wealthy and powerful and sophisticated, influential and unique? Simple word, refined philosophy. The refinement of philosophy. The extra studies and the extra books and the extra classes and the extra thinking, the extra pondering, the extra give and take of testing ideas and debate and discussion. That's where the extra life comes from, is in the dimensions of refined philosophy, the extra thinking. And these are the steps of intellectual discovery that a lot of people just don't want to take, or they're too busy to take it, or It presents itself in too strong and tough a manner, these extra skills. But I'm telling you, once you start engaging in these extra skills, you won't ever want to go back. This new intellectual discovery is where the wealth is. It's where the happiness is, the good life, influence, power. Refinement of philosophy. Now, our philosophy comes from a lot of places. Let me give it to you. Number one, from teaching, the influence of others, from the books we read, from the classes we take. And you might underline the word influence. This is where a big share of our philosophy comes from. Influence.